Okay, right. Well, good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock. Welcome to the first full remote executive meeting at South Hams. We shall be following the agenda as published. I have just a few instructions for you, a few housekeeping instructions. Please ensure your microphones are muted unless you wish to speak. It's also quite a good idea to turn your video off because for people who haven't got very strong broadband, it does help. If you wish to ask a question or speak during a debate, please indicate your wish to do so via the instant messaging facility and type in speak, question, debate. There's no need to type your name in as we can see who you are. Members should only speak when invited to do so by the chairman. I will try to name you, but should I forget, could you name yourself before you start to speak? In the event of the meeting lasting beyond 2 hours, which I sincerely hope it doesn't, then the meeting will be adjourned to enable a short comfort break. I doubt there will be any need to record votes this morning. And I think otherwise that should be enough for this meeting. So we'll move into the first item on the agenda, which are the minutes of the last meeting. These minutes have already been through Council. So members of the executive, do you have any points you wish to raise on these minutes? Otherwise, we'll move on, unless any members of any other members of Council would like to come in with any comments?
No comments, Chairman.
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. I can't see anything coming up on the IM, so we'll move on from that too. At the moment, I don't have any urgent business to bring forward. It may be necessary to divide the agenda later on in the meeting because there are some papers in part 2, but if we restrict our discussions to not to detail of those papers, then we may not have to go into part 2. Declarations of interest. Members, you're invited to declare any personal or disclosable pecuniary interests, including the nature and extent of such interests that you may have in any items to be considered at this meeting. I take it, members, you have nothing to declare.
Julie, I may have one. I'm a member of Kingsware Parish Council that has a contract with South Hams District Council maintenance team, but just as a member of the Parish Council.
Right. Well, that will only impinge if you need to discuss any specifics in that paper, Councillor Hawkins. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we move on to item 5, which is public question time. Now, I do have one public question. Is the lady going to read this out herself, or am I going to read it out for her? Could somebody advise me on that, please?
You please, Councillor Pearce. Right.
Okay. So the question that's been received is: this council might be aware that one of the most venerated barristers of our time, Michael Mansfield, QC, is currently taking legal action against the rollout of 5G, and that Devon County Council is currently taking 5G to scrutiny. I request that South Hams District Council takes proactive steps to prevent 5G capable infrastructure from being rolled out anywhere in the South Hams, and that all planning applications for any 5G infrastructure, e.g. 5G masts, are objected to or at least put on hold until DCC has made their recommendation after their full scrutiny process. So my reply to this is that South Hams District Council's involvement in 5G is limited to its development management planning function. We have a duty to determine applications submitted to us, and there is a clear government guidance in the MPPF in paragraphs 112 to 116, which states that LPA should not impose a blanket ban on new electronic communications in certain areas or over a wider area. In relation to 5G, the MPPF is explicit in its support as part of a network of high-quality communications infrastructure. A large number of telecommunications works are permitted development, subject to certain stipulations concerning the maximum height of masts, number of antennae or dishes, the Council has no powers. Land such as conservation areas, AONBs or World Heritage Sites are excluded from these permitted development rights. Some proposals require an application to be made for prior approval, but this is limited to the siting and the appearance of the apparatus. In all cases, telecommunications operators are encouraged to share site share and must comply with statutory conditions and restrictions, and mobile network operators have a code of best practice. Telecommunications operators must abide by the following documents. 1. Code of Best Practice on Mobile Network Development in England 2016, edition published on the 24th of November 2016. And 2, Cabinet Siting and Pole Siting Code of Practice issued on the 2nd of November 2016. The first of these documents states, consistent with the advice set out in paragraph 46 of the NPPF, and I think that was a previous edition of the NPPF, local planning authorities should not seek to determine health and safety matters that are subject to separate controls, providing applications are accompanied with an International Commission on Non-Ionising Radiation Protection, in brackets that's the ICNIRP certificate. Planning authorities are not required to make any further judgment on health and safety issues. Then Mrs. Augenthaler wanted to ask a supplementary question to this. Now, a supplementary question would normally arise out of my answer. So we have said to the questioner that she may ask a supplementary in writing, and we will reply to it in writing. And to my knowledge, that ends the questions for this morning. So the next item on the agenda is the Executive Forward Plan. And I'm afraid my modern.gov has just reverted to its log-on mode, so I've just got to do that. And it probably won't let me in for a bit. But do any members wish to raise any questions on the forward plan?
No, thank you, Chairman.
No, it's not letting me in. Anybody else got any members got any questions on the forward plan?
No, thank you.
No.
I have none.
No, any other members apart from you? Right, okay. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get myself back on my agenda. So we will move now to item number 7. Sorry, I'm still struggling a little bit with my agenda. Item 7, which is, apologies everybody for this, which is the Coronavirus Response and Draft Recovery and Renewal Plan. Now, I'm most grateful to the Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny, who I think did an absolutely splendid job last Thursday, even though the meeting was rather long, in getting through it in a methodical and chairing the meeting very well, getting through it in a methodical order. That has given us a very good basis for moving forward. You will be aware that we have added a place and environment group to the various work streams that were shown at that meeting, and which are now in one of the appendices. And I'm afraid I don't have those listed in front of me, so you'll have to forgive me if I don't tell you which one it is. We feel this is very important to add this work stream because the green recovery will be important, and that is a good place to slot it in. Darryl White is currently working on the workshop dates, and I hope that he will have something for you before the close of play tomorrow at the latest on when these dates will be. We are still, notwithstanding this plan, in the response and basic recovery phase of this emergency, and some areas of the council and of work outside will be slower than others to recover. We also would like to cross-reference all our work to the Team Devon work and the Devon Recovery Plan, both of which are going on at the moment, and we're having weekly meetings discussing how that's moving forwards. The workstream meetings will be programmed into the weeks commencing the 6th and the 13th of July. Now, moving to the recommendations, these mainly are similar or arise out of the overview and scrutiny meeting last week. The plan is that I'm happy to pass all these papers through for further discussion at the working group meetings, and then final results will come back to overview and scrutiny before coming to executive and going on to council in September. Now, members of the executive, do any of you have any questions on this before we move into any debate?
No, Chairman.
No, thank you. And if not, do I have any questions from the wider membership of the council on any of this before we move into any debate? Nothing's coming up on the IM, so I assume you don't. Is there any part of these papers that anybody wishes to debate? Sounds like there isn't. I'm happy then to move the recommendations 1 to 5. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Bastone. Members of the executive, are you happy to approve all these recommendations?
Support.
Support?
Approve.
Agree.
Right. Thank you very much. Well, it looks like that paper is approved. We will move on now to the next item on the agenda, which is the month 1 and 2 revenue budget monitoring 2020 to 21. Councillor Bastone, please.
If I could move the recommendations firstly.
Second.
Have a seconder.
Second.
Members, this is the first budget monitoring report of 2021 and the first report since the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. This has caused financial strain for all councils up and down the country, and this has affected the whole of the local government sector. However, the council is well placed to meet the financial challenges due to its prudent financial management over previous years, which is a credit to members and to officers. Indeed, no part of the public sector is better placed than district councils to catalyse and lead the recovery, and we will rise to the challenge. The report covers the budget monitoring position for the first 2 months of April and May. The current position is the actual net revenue expenditure is forecast to be over budget by £2.588 million, and that is 27.5% of our budget when compared against the total set for 2021, due mainly to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. This position is after taking into account the £0.9 million government grant which the council has received for COVID-19. Many of the council's key income streams such as planning income, car parking income, investment income, trade waste income and income from the Dartmouth Lower Ferry have all been impacted. Since the recovery plan report was drafted, the lockdown due to COVID-19 has been eased and the financial assumptions around the council's income streams have been revised in this report. For example, the council's car parks have reopened and therefore the estimates in this report reflect this updated position. Projections could improve and it is difficult to predict as we don't know how quickly things will bounce back. We will be monitoring our finances on a monthly basis, and as actual figures emerge, we will refine these figures and our assumptions. The report details how COVID-19 has also been impacted on the go live date for the Devon Aligned service for our waste and recycling service, where there is a potential delay of 5 months until February 2021. This budget monitoring report also excludes the impact of reductions in income from business rates and council tax, as these do not affect the council's bottom line in 2021 apart from the pooling gain. The impact of this is felt later in 21-22 through the collection fund, so the impact is delayed. But we still need a plan for how we will cope with the reductions in income. The picture on how much our collection rate is down for business rates and council tax will become clearer in the next couple of months, once there is more information on actual monthly payments received. The council's cash flow position is still adversely affected, as payments to preceptors such as Devon County Council have to be made in full by the council. Any loss of income streams for Salcombe Harbour have also been excluded from this report, as Salcombe Harbour is a ring-fenced account. The leaders of councils in Devon wrote to the Right Honourable Robert Jenrick, MP, the Secretary of State, drawing his urgent attention to the 85.7 million shortfall in funding across Devon councils, which threatens not only the financial stability of councils in Devon, but also the delivery of essential public services. A copy of that letter is appended to this report. The report sets out how we plan to respond as a council, and time needs to be taken over the next few months and weeks to put together proposals for members to consider for an amended budget for 2021. A member budget workshop will be arranged in August to explore all areas with members, supplemented by informal council briefings. At this stage, members, I would like to hand over to our new Chief Executive, Mr. Bates, to give a short overview of the regional and national context. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bastone, and thanks very much for very clearly setting out the situation we face. I would refer members to the executive summary of the report, and in particular section 2.1, which sets out the regional and national context. I'm in quite a good position, I think, having previously been the Local Government Association's regional lead for the South West, to give a comparative view of the council's position relative to others across the region, and indeed nationally. As you've said, Councillor Bastone, this is a situation which affects all councils, and it's true to say that every single council in the country is in a position in which it needs additional funding. We are working hard to make the case for South Hams District Council, and we're working collaboratively with colleagues in Devon. We have, as you said, written to the Secretary of State to make the case, and we will continue to lobby through that route and through our MPs locally about the issues that affect us. In addition to that, Lisa Buckle and myself have joined the regional officer grouping, which is led by one of our senior chief executives within the region, who is has a finance background, which is bringing together the region, and more importantly perhaps than the analysis itself, beginning to bring together ideas and suggestions which we will make to government as to how various easings could be made to our financial arrangements, in particular some technical adjustments, which I think Lisa will probably explain in a little bit more detail if asked, which we think would ease the cash flow position. As I said, all councils need additional money. The government has already made 2 instalments of money to councils across the country, which in overall terms has met the additional costs of COVID. What it hasn't yet done is to make an allocation to local government which reflects the loss of income, and we will be making the case very strongly with respect to that. In terms of the council's position, I think it's fair to say that I would absolutely echo your introductory comments about how well placed the council is. You've been extremely prudent in your management of finances over the years, and as a result are well placed to deal with this situation. It is serious. We must focus our attention on this and work steadfastly over the summer in order that we can bring forward information to inform the council as to how it goes forward with this year's budget and indeed next year. I'm confident though that we start that from a good position, and if necessary we do have extensive reserves which we can draw on, and as you have pointed out, Councillor Bastone, in your passing of the in terms of the recommendations, there is a recommendation for a comprehensive review of those reserves. So I think I'll leave it at that point, and happy to respond to councillors' questions if they have any. Thank you.
Chair, you were on mute, so I've just unmuted you.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. I have a question from Councillor Baldry.
Good morning, members. I hope I'm not taking advantage of this opportunity to ask a question, but to draw members who haven't already heard the sad news that Dame Vera Lynn died this morning, aged 103. But that is not my question. My question, Councillor Bastone mentioned the fact that we are still paying other precepting authorities. I really would like to know what attempts have we made and what have we discussed, especially with Devon County Council, but also with fire and police, and I guess with the parish councils, to say, can we defer the payment?
Councillor Bastone, do you want to answer that one, or do you want me to answer it?
Lisa has had the contact with the councils and with government on this issue, but could I therefore pass to Lisa to give an explanation of what has actually happened?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bastone. Thank you, Chair. I'll just start my video. So yes, the precepting arrangements are actually set out in law. So they're set out in the Local Government Finance Act. So the way the Local Government Finance Act works at the moment is that we are under a statutory duty by law to pay the payments in full to our major precepting authorities, which is Devon County Council, the fire and the police, in accordance with those regulations. So as the regulations stand at the moment, we must make those payments in full. What we are lobbying the government on is for a change to those regulations, which are set out in the Local Government Finance Act. And the change we are lobbying for is along the lines of that those regulations, when they came into place, were envisaged for a much different time, when the collection rate and the actual amount collected, there would have been very small differences between assumptions of collection rates and the actual amount collected. We are in very different times in this particular financial year, and what we are lobbying for through the government and through the LGA is that there is a change to those regulations, which basically says that we would pay our major precepting authorities the same amount that we have actually experienced in being able to collect in terms of council tax. So we are lobbying for the change in those regulations. We've obviously done some cash flow projections. So for example, if our collection rate for council tax were to be impacted, say by about 10%, by the end of the financial year, the negative cash flow impact on us would be around £7 million. So we have put a case study together on that, which we've given to the Local Government Association. I have also had some contact from MHCLG that were also asking councils if we can show them the cash flow impact of those current precepting arrangements. So the same case study I will let MHCLG have as well. So at the moment we have no choice as such. We have to follow the Local Government Finance Act and those regulations, but we are lobbying for a change in those at the moment.
Thank you, Mrs. Buckle. And I can confirm I've just come off a district council's network call, and we shall be lobbying Simon Clarke next week on the very self-same subject. So, Councillor Baldry, it is in hand, but it's a legislation problem rather than a problem with the county council. So we would have to wait for a change in legislation.
Briefly coming back, I fully understood the legal position. I just wondered what informal discussions we had taken with the other Devon authorities, or Devon and Somerset, in the case of the Fire Authority. And also, we are in a fortunate position. What happens if a district council simply can't pay? It may be illegal, but none of us are going to go to prison.
Mrs. Buckle, have you got an answer to that question?
Well, we aren't in that position. We don't have a difficulty in terms of the cash flow. For councils who are, what MHCLG are saying is to get in contact with them if they feel there are going to be any cash flow difficulties, and they will deal with those cases on a case-by-case basis with those individual councils. But we aren't in that position at the moment, so we've obviously not made that contact.
Thank you. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Hawkins, you've got a question.
I haven't got a question. I've got a comment, if I may. Is that okay, Chairman?
That's fine. Carry on.
I was just going to say how lucky South Hams and West Devon are to have Lisa Buckle on her team, with all the expertise and knowledge that she has got and her team has got, and that thankfully a number of you selected Andy as our new chief executive. I think we've got a really good team to help the residents of South Hams and West Devon.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Brazil, you want to come in with a question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Julie.
Questions?
Sorry?
Questions, it says here.
Yeah, questions, yeah. They're sort of similar. I just on the explanations as to why the variations in the budget. So the investment income, we're looking for that to be down by 90%. I wanted to just go into a bit more depth in that. Then also the homelessness. Where is it? I've lost that one for the moment.
Get the homelessness income.
Yeah, just why the homelessness income has gone down.
Yes. So those two are together on the list. Yes.
Yeah. And then also just about the waste, and that you're saying that it's going to start costing us £65,000 a month. Presumably that's from September, which is why there's nothing there at the moment. But just again, why that is the case.
Okay, members, Councillor Brazil is talking to the table on page 62 of the agenda. And Councillor Bastone, do you want to answer those? You're on mute, Councillor Bastone. Oh dear, he's on, where's he gone? He's on mute.
I'm able to answer those, Chairman.
Would you like to come forward? Yes, please, thank you.
Yes, thank you. So in terms of our investment income, we've got budgeted investment income of £203,000 for this financial year. Members will be aware that base rate has dropped to an all-time low. It is now 1%. And in terms of what we think we will be able to achieve, because we need to keep our investments short term, so we are only investing out for a maximum of 6 months at the moment, and keeping most of those investments short term, i.e. 3 months for our cash flow purposes. We think we won't achieve much more than about 20,000, possibly 30,000 on that. So that's why we've put an assumption of 90% won't be achieved, but it's mainly due to the fact that the base rate is an all-time low at 0.1%, and that we need to keep all of our investments short term at the moment. With regards to homelessness, so yes, we are projecting, what that is actually, rather than homelessness income, in the next report we will describe that as a homelessness reimbursement of costs. So that is actually a repayment to cover our costs rather than income. So what happens there is we get housing benefit income to support our costs for temporary bed and breakfast accommodation, which is provided to homeless. And that results in a reduction in housing benefit subsidy. So the DWP at the moment applies ceiling to the housing benefit, so that, and we also have a reduction in rental income there for shire properties as well. So it's mainly that reimbursement through the housing benefit and the housing benefit subsidy. With regards to waste, we have modelled there a worst case scenario, and that worst case is that there is a delay to the September go live date of 5 months at £65,000 per month. The main reasons for that is around the materials and the recycling income that we can get on that, because obviously if we're not able to separate out our garden waste and our food waste, what that means is we're not getting as much income for those recycling credits as we would have done if we'd have been able to go live with the Devon Aligned service. But I will stress that that is a worst case scenario at the moment.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Buckle. Does that answer your questions, Councillor Brazil?
Yes, that's excellent. And sorry, there was just, I'm sorry to take out the other one, the employment estates income. Just if we could have a quick sort of state of where our position is with that.
Yes, it is very early days really on the employment estate. So we have put a general assumption in there of a reduction of 25%, which is very similar to what other councils have put in their monitoring reports. We will be able to firm those figures up as we move through the financial year and look at actual debtors, so look at actual invoices raised and the actual payments of those invoices. But at the moment, because we are at an early stage of reporting, we have put a general 25% in there.
Councillor Brazil, I should say that we are trying to work closely with the other districts in Devon to make a case for the whole of Devon on this. And so some of the figures have been agreed as a projection moving forward in the uncertainty that we're in after 3 months, and in the hopes that things will get better. So to some extent, this is a worst case scenario.
Chairman?
Yes, Councillor Baldry, was that you?
It was me, yes, I did put on the list.
You said you wanted to answer on waste. Yes, I did. Indeed, yes, of course.
And Mrs. Buckle has done it more than adequately, but just to tell members that there is a waste board jointly with FCC, which the 3 South Hams members are Councillor Hopwood and Councillor Bastone, and we met yesterday with the officers to discuss this potential overspend. We are not at all happy with the numbers. The officers have gone away to think a bit more about it, and we are going to meet again next week. And Mrs. Buckle has quite rightly said that a part of the £66,000 potential overspend per month is the materials question, but there is also a large item in there relating to the fact that if we do not introduce the Devon Aligned service, we will have to continue to produce the plastic bags for the blue sacks and the clear sacks as well, and that is a sum of in the order of £20,000 a month doing that. So that is the additional reason for the potential overspend, but we are discussing it.
Thank you. Councillor Pannell.
Thank you, Chairman. Mrs. Buckle explained the situation about the loss of income from investments. That it has been mooted that we may find ourselves next year or even sooner, in a situation of negative interest rates. Are we in a position where we could find ourselves having to pay out money for people to look after our cash? If that is the case, what other alternatives are there apart from taking it out and putting it under your bed?
We're not in that position at the moment, but if we were, we would take advice from our treasury management advisors who are linked services in terms of what would be the best thing to do with our investments, because obviously most councils would be in that position. We have got an investment of 3.5 million with the CCLA. That is a long-term investment over 5 years. But that probably is the maximum amount that we could put into long-term investments. So we would take advice from our treasury management advisors, as we do on a quarterly basis anyway. We have meetings with them and see which financial instruments that they would recommend that we invest in if we were to be in that position.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Buckle. I see a comment has come up on the messaging board from Councillor Hodgson. Purchase housing to provide social housing and get rent. Councillor Hodgson, this is money that we're holding on the collection fund before we hand it over, so we couldn't do that with it. I think that's right, Mrs. Buckle, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, this is cash flow money.
Yes.
Housing.
Right. Councillor Bastone now has moved the recommendations. I think we've had all the questions and comments. Does anybody want to go into debate on this, or can we move to the recommendations?
Chairman, could I just add one extra thing, if that's
yeah,
okay?
Of course you may, Mrs. Buckle.
Thank you, Chair. That in Parliament this week there was actually a question asked to the Housing and Local Government Minister of State, Simon Clarke MP, and he did actually tell MPs earlier this week that he was working closely with Cabinet colleagues on a comprehensive plan to ensure Council's financial sustainability over the financial year ahead. And there was a response from the chairman of the LGA to that, who said, we urge the government to bring forward details of this comprehensive plan as soon as possible.
Thank you. Yes, I think we're lobbying hard to get some certainty by September at the latest, so that we can, first of all, get this year's budget sorted out and move forward into next year's budgeting. And that will be one of the main work streams of the recovery programme. Thank you very much. Councillor Bastone, do you want to say anything further before we go to the vote? You're on. Okay.
Yeah, I was on mute previously.
You were.
Sorry
yes.
about that.
That's all right.
I was going to answer Councillor Brazil, but Lisa has done it adequately. And far better than I could have.
Fine,
Nothing
so
further to add, Chairman.
Okay, so if this will be a report which comes back monthly to us now, and until we take an emergency budget in September, we will be working on variations against the budget we set way back in February before any of this had really started. And had we known, we might not have done it, but that's where we are. So is everybody happy to approve the recommendations at the top of this report, little 1 to 4?
Agreed. Yes, Chairman. Agreed.
Yes. Good.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next item, the Ivybridge Regeneration Project, item 9 on the agenda. Councillor Bastone, it's yours again. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Before I start, I just wanted to say that the executive did receive a letter from an organisation called PL21 in connection with this Ivybridge regeneration. And for those of you who don't know PL21, they're an organisation in Ivybridge who say they are passionate about community benefits, and we look forward to working with you to maximise those associated with this regeneration scheme. And they have provided a list of items that they would like considered, mostly to do with cycling, but I do have an answer for them, which I'd like to do publicly now. The Council would like to thank PL21 for their continued engagement with the Ivybridge Regeneration project. They have raised a number of very useful points, particularly in relation to public realm and cycling facilities, which will be considered during the design phase of the project, should the Council approve the scheme in full in September. At the current time, the images and proposals included in the report to the Executive are illustrative only and do not represent the final proposals, which would be decided through the planning process. Now, thank you to PL21, and we will involve you in some way as we progress. Introduce now the agenda item number 9. I don't believe there has ever been a time in recent history when the role of government at every level has been as important as it is now, to step in and support businesses and protect jobs in their time of need. High streets were in turmoil even before the current crisis, and they must adapt and change to avoid being left behind. We have the ability to help business, to help our towns, and to help our communities by leading regeneration projects such as this. It will deliver jobs, economic growth, and increased footfall to the town of Ivybridge. Crucially, it is strongly supported by the residents of the town and the district. At the same time, local government faces its own financial challenges, and we must act prudently to ensure that we can continue to deliver frontline services to all of our communities. For this, I strongly support and advocate the proposals contained in this report to move the project forward, in part to de-risk key aspects of it and therefore protect the Council's finances. This will then allow the Council to take a full decision in September on this multi-million-pound investment. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Did you move the recommendations?
I will move the recommendations now.
Thank you. I'll second them. Right. Members of the Executive, do you have any questions on this one, please?
Not at this stage, no.
Right. Councillor Panel, you want... Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, it's Councillor Abbott. Could you ask your question on the open pages?
Yes, thank you. In section 10, it's page 104 on the paper copy. There's a comment about community safety, crime and disorder, but it doesn't say whether there is a risk or not. The paperwork is not quite complete.
Councillor Bastone, can you answer that question, or do you want to pass it over to Chris Brooke? Councillor Bastone, you're on mute again.
Right, I've got to page 104. There are crime implications and disorder. Right. I'm not sure. Could I ask Mr. Brooke to answer that one?
Certainly, Councillor Bastone and Chairman. Yes, I must offer my most sincere apologies. I think that's actually a typo and there's a word missing, which is the word no. But that, of course, is subject to good design and all of the safeguarding measures that you do build into a good design going forward. So at this point, we have not identified any, and we would continue to work through the design process to ensure that that's the case.
Yes, that's fine. Because I would go on to say, thank you for the clarification, that the construction will involve space and restriction problems, and of course there will be a construction management plan, but that is vitally important, not only to maintain existing car parking spaces, but also a pathway to the north side. But on which point? PL21 have raised the issue of access and a dark passageway on the north side of the proposed Aldi site, i.e. between the Aldi and the town hall, about disabled access to the river and across the river, and about opportunity for a town square rather than for a bridge. And I would like to keep these in the forefront of your minds, so that if these opportunities could be addressed, rather than it going under the radar.
Well, I believe that we've already given that reassurance with my statement at the beginning, that we would talk with PL21 and discuss any proposals as we go along, and hopefully be able to include some of the suggestions that they make. Obviously, some of them are really expensive, like the town square. That's going to would be an expensive undertaking, but we will certainly discuss it as we go forward.
Thank you.
Right, now, Councillor Abbott, you have 2 more questions that are under the exempt section. Do you mind if I take the other questions first and come back to those?
No, please do.
Whatever's the best. Right, okay, thanks very much. So, Councillor Austin, you want to speak. Is this a question, or would you just want to speak?
I'd like to speak, Chairman, but I believe that Councillor Pannell was actually before me. I think he was looking to put a question.
Well, was he? Because I thought that was on the last item, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, you are wrong, Chairman. Sorry.
I am wrong. Well, I'm sorry about that, because you had a question at the end and you've only got one up on the board, so I thought you'd asked your question.
Yeah, not to worry, I'll forgive you. May I speak now?
You may. Go on then.
Thank you. 2 questions, really. One is on the car parking aspect. The report, I understand that we are investigating the legalities of being able to introduce a automatic number plate recognition scheme for car parking fees. But as far as I can see, the consultant's report only refers to the income from various options for pay and display. Is that going to be addressed? If we are able to introduce number plate recognition, which I think is a very good scheme, I think it works very well when people don't know how long exactly they want to stay in an area. Can we have an assessment of how that will impact on revenue? That was the first question. And the other one is that the report refers to the enhancement of the riverbank. Obviously, any scheme for a town square might help there, but I've long felt, well, nearly 50 years, that Glanville's Mill was developed the wrong way round, with its back to the river instead of opening up the river as an amenity. And I'd like to know what measures we are planning to enhance the riverbank there, make it more accessible for the public. And I'm disappointed that the report makes a great play of planting trees off-site. I know there are some trees planted, but I would like that I'd like the area to remain a green and pleasant place with more tree planting. And finally, just to back up what Mr. Councillor Abbott was saying, I am concerned that the new development is very close to the back of the town hall, and what is now a pleasant and light open space will become a dark alleyway, and I do think we should look at whether it can be moved slightly further away. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brooke, would you like to answer those questions?
Certainly, Chairman. So the report in the appendices that talks about revenue from pay and display income, without going into any figures, you can substitute the words pay and display for ANPR, because that's just what it really means is the amount of money you collect rather than the mechanism through which you collect it. The difference here is that if you took any figure that was based on a pay and display principle, ANPR gives customers better flexibility to stay as long as they like, which can, not always, but can lead to them staying longer. And ANPR has a high collection rate because it's much more robust. So any figures that are based on pay and display, you can say are a kind of worst case. So in terms of Are we still confident that the figures in that appendices are robust? Then I think yes, we are. And you're correct to say that there is a piece of work to be done around ANPR to ensure that it can be smoothly operated, legally operated, and done so so that all of our customers and that people want to enjoy Ivybridge can do so, at their convenience. And that's one of the key recommendations of the report, which is to do that piece of work ahead of the next report in September. So thank you for raising it. The river work, again, I just would like to refer back to the point that everything is at concept stage. It's not at detailed design. So some of these we're kind of straying into detailed design questions, and perhaps I prefer to defer those. But in principle, the concept is to open up the riverbank on the south side. We can't do anything about the north side. We don't own that land, apart from lobby the owners. But we can allow the people that are coming from the south, from our car park, to be able to get closer to the river for it not to be shielded. But again, we must always balance that against changes to that habitat. So there's always a tension with everything we do, but the idea is to allow better vistas through the river area without taking down too many key trees, obviously, so more around shrub clearance. Trees, I take your point. There are proposals to put trees back onto the site, and I totally agree with you. It needs to remain as green and pleasant as it can. Even if we were looking to be neutral on the number of trees, well, we are actually looking to be fairly neutral on the number of trees, but the scheme itself will deliver far more trees back than there are now, because it has to do that to mitigate the loss of some, if it goes forward, to mitigate the loss of some sort of older species. So it will be a net positive in terms of numbers. There will be those that believe that's never enough, and I understand their concerns around that. It's a very emotive topic, trees, and I understand. And again, the alleyway, I think it's actually quite wide. I would say this, but I believe it's actually quite a lot wider than people are perhaps considering in real life, to perhaps how it looks on the drawings. But we will look at that, and those are the sorts of considerations that we would do at a detailed design stage. But we're not at that stage yet. But I take the point on board, and we will consider it. Thank you,
Mr. Brett. That's all very helpful.
Thank you. Before we go any further, Councillor Hopwood's got a question. Would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Cheston. There's sort of comments and questions all rolled into one, if I may, and they're not in any particular order. I'm delighted. Obviously, Audi are a carbon neutral company, and there's something in the report that says about putting solar panels on the roof. And is that going to happen, or is that on your wish list? Is my first question, because I think we should push for it to happen. It would help with the viability of the project. I'm at 2.4. I see that in 2013, the Town Council commissioned a town centre study, and the Ivybridge Town Centre ranked 2000 and something in the rankings. It was very, very low down in the rankings of town centres. I remember over the past however many years I've been on the council, the problem with Ivybridge and the town centre has always been that it isn't very vibrant, and there have been schemes have been proposed in the past and not come to fruition, or schemes have not helped with the regeneration. So I think this is our last ditch attempt to get Ivybridge right. But one thing I do notice through reading through this report, and I've read it over and over again, is the very, very limited conversations that seem to have happened with Totnes Town Council. Totnes Town Council, I can only see mentioned in this once, maybe twice, definitely once.
Councillor Hopwood, do you mean Ivybridge Town Council?
I do. Did I say Totnes?
You did say Totnes.
Oh, because that's all we ever hear. Sorry. I meant Ivybridge. So Ivybridge Town Council. So I would like to know how involved Ivybridge Town Council are in this project, because it's in my mind, as a district council, we are enablers. So we would be setting the project up, setting the plans up, but I would like to see it driven by Ivybridge Town Council with our help. So what we're doing now would be the plan, and Ivybridge Town Council helping us to move it forward. And I see little evidence of that in this so far, which I think is bitterly disappointing. And my other question is, so that's another question, is what are we doing to work closely with Ivybridge Town Council? And also, are they positive? Are their views of our scheme positive views, or are they not positive? I know in the early stages they were very, their views weren't positive towards the supermarket scheme. So I hope they're changing their opinion now, because I know through all the local forums and local media, residents of Ivybridge can't wait for an Aldi in Ivybridge. It's going to be helpful to them. My other question is the bridges. The bridges are a really important part of this. One bridge closed, one bridge open, but needing repairs to it. My understanding is that both bridges need to really be open for this to be a really successful project. So where are we with that? And do you think how we pay for these bridges, I don't think it's fair that it would all fall onto South Hams Council. I think that we should be asking Ivybridge, and I hope we have, for a contribution to those bridges. So have we asked Ivybridge for a contribution towards the bridges? Because that is a fundamental part of connecting the town centre itself to the Aldi and getting the footfall back into that town centre. If we have contacted Ivybridge Town Council, Mr. Brooke, can I have the answer they've given them? And my very last question is, PL21 want a town square instead of a bridge. My suggestion would be is if PL21 want a town square, then that may be something that the Ivybridge Town Council itself could look towards doing. I think that we have to have a limit on what we can do as a council. I would put a bridge above a town square purely for connectivity into the town centre. So that's me done. Thank you.
Mr. Brooke.
Thank you, Councillor Holbert. So I think I've captured your questions, and if I've missed any at the end, please do remind me. So the solar, the position we would have here is that normally when we have an end tenant lined up, such as Aldi, we would lease them the entire building, and the building would be theirs to do with what they like. In this case, as you correctly point out, they're a carbon neutral company, and they would probably be looking to put solar panels on the building in any case. The difference here is, as part of our early negotiations, we've said that we would like to be able to own and install those solar panels to allow them the same benefit they would get if they did it themselves. But in doing that, there's a positive for both of us. They get to be carbon neutral. We get to ensure that we definitely get to ensure that it happens because we pay to put them on, and then we also benefit from the revenue position of selling the solar power, the green power, to Aldi. So it's a win all round. Yeah, so whether we do or not remains a decision for the council in September, because there obviously is a capital cost to solar panels. But the fact that we've negotiated the opportunity to do it, I think, is a good one. Ivybridge Town Council, we've been very involved with Ivybridge Town Council over the run into to get to the point where we are, so as in the lead into this scheme. We've had lots and lots of stakeholder meetings that have been at the Town Council, at least 2 public ones, multiple emails from the clerk. I think I can't really speak for them, but I don't believe they were quite as supportive as perhaps we would have hoped initially. I think that's probably fair to say. I think we are yet to have their formal position now that the public consultation results are out. I mean, I did send them I sent the public consultation results to the Town Council before they went public, certainly at the same time. So we probably need the opportunity, and perhaps we should seek the opportunity to ask them formally what their views are. So I wouldn't like to speak for them. But I would like to reiterate the offer that, of course, it is a far better position to be in, to be working with the Town Council as a key and valued member of this team to bring forward a scheme that they can influence to the benefit of Ivybridge, rather than us having to work in isolation because we're kind of, not able to have that relationship. So I can only strengthen your comments there, really, which is to say the door is open. It always has been. We'd love to work with them on this proactively and constructively. You asked me about the bridges. I totally agree. And on the record, it's absolutely a regeneration scheme. The bridges are central to it. One bridge is central to it. Two bridges is definitely the icing on the cake. They are owned by Glanville's Mill. They are not owned by the South Hams District Council. So they are in private ownership, and we do need to work with that landowner to try and bring them back into a good state of repair. They know that. They are a private company with their own commercial challenges and commercial decisions to make, so we can't necessarily get the outcome we want there just through lobbying. We have asked the town council if they would be interested in asking their precepting residents if they would like to pay a little bit of money towards the bridges, and they have declined to do that. They've actually, their view is, and I will share this with you, Councillor Hopwood, that it's unlawful for them to own bridges. I'll share with you their legal response, but on the record, I would argue that perhaps isn't the case. I think there is a way that if they were mindful to do it, they could help see the bridges reopened. So that's perhaps a future conversation, and I'll share with you that advice. Perhaps that's all of your questions answers, Councillor Hopwood, but if not, then please do come back.
Thank you, Mr. Brooke. I would welcome you pressing. That is all my questions answered. But my concern is the bridge. Obviously, if it's landed on our mat to repair these bridges, we won't own them either. We'll just be repairing them. So I'm disappointed at the Ivybridge stance, and I think from this council I would urge you, as you have said, to go back to them again, and maybe if they were to put out a survey to their residents and explain the position to them, that they could help with the regeneration, would they mind paying an extra, whatever it is, and that would help. So yeah, I am disappointed with that, and I hope you can keep banging the drum that those bridges are needed desperately for the residents of Ivybridge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, now, we still have 2 questions outstanding from Councillor Panel, which I think are going to involve us going into part 2. Councillor Panel, can I ask you now whether it would have been useful to have...
I think you mean Councillor Abbott, Chairman.
I'm sorry, it's Councillor Abbott. I beg your pardon, it's Councillor Abbott. Yes, you're quite right. Councillor Abbott, it would have been useful to have notice of these questions before the meeting. Can I ask you, do you need to ask them to the meeting, or are they questions that you could ask to Mr. Brooke after the meeting? I'm not trying to put you off asking them at a public meeting, but it will mean we've got to go into private session.
I can go along with that.
So you will ask Mr. Brooke outside the meeting? I will. Thank you very much. Okay, so that means we don't have to go into part 2, which makes things much easier. Now, Councillor Baldry, you want to make a comment, please?
Before you do, Chairman,
Yes.
Councillor Brazil has some questions.
Councillor Austin is in front of me, and is Councillor Brazil.
Councillor Brazil, have you got questions, or you want to speak? Oh, you want to speak after the questions. Councillor Baldry, the only reason I'm taking you first is that you are an executive member.
I know that, but I would rather hear certainly from the local member and from Councillor Brazil as well, and I shall speak after that.
All right, okay. Councillor Austin, then, it's your turn, and I'm sorry to have kept you waiting.
That's okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
I think the main point that I'd like to sort of bring to the executive, the two main big issues on this, is first of all that it really is a regeneration plan for the town, and it's not just about building an Aldi supermarket. It really is a regeneration process for the whole town. And the second main point I think I'd like the executive to pay particular attention to is that when we did the survey, which was an extensive survey of local residents, there were actually twice as many people who said they wanted an Aldi as people said they didn't want an Aldi. So there was an overwhelming majority of people in the town who said they wanted us to go ahead and build an Aldi. Now, earlier on on the consultation, we were looking at all sorts of other things like a drive-through, Costa Coffee, and so on like that. Those have all been removed from the recommendation, and what we're left with is effectively the result of an extensive consultation, both with town council but also with residents in the town. And having gone through that process, where we're at is we've got this very, very large majority of people in the town who want the whole thing to go ahead. The High Street in Ivybridge at the moment has got real problems. Glanville's Mill and the High Street has got very significant problems. And given the current circumstances with the coronavirus, this is really only, there's a real possibility that this could get considerably worse as we start to kind of implement social distancing, and businesses like cafes and so on have problems implementing those kind of things. One of the things is that Tesco's in Ivybridge is absolutely dominant in terms of the competition within the supermarkets in the town. And you could ask the question, why is it that so many residents, are so much in favour of putting a supermarket in? And I think, having spent a long time talking to a lot of people about it, it fundamentally just comes down to the fact that they have the capacity to save a substantial amount of money. I mean, most of the people I talk to say to me that, they could basically save quite a lot of money on their weekly shopping, by having, this supermarket on their doorstep. And that's really the reason why it's so popular in the town. It does fit in with the government strategy at the moment, which is to get the economy moving. And there's a number of things within it that are really important, which is the skate park, which we're also looking at regenerating and creating a new park there. We've talked about the bridges. Getting the bridges open in Ivybridge is a really important thing. So part of the regeneration process is to get these bridges fixed and open so that it assists Glanville's Mill. We're also looking at a wildlife program in terms of the river frontage, and really, I mean, as far as the executive is concerned, the important thing for me is that Ivybridge is the largest town in the South Hams, and it has actually got some real problems in terms of the retail offering it's got at the moment. Now, I'd like also to draw your attention in particular to point 3.4.6, and in there what it says is basically that 49% of customers that go to an Aldi supermarket will also go and shop somewhere else whilst they're doing their shop. So not all the Aldi customers go and do that, but almost half of the people who go to an Aldi supermarket will also pop into another shop nearby. And that's why it's so essential that we push this forward as much as we can, really effectively. So I'd like to also thank Chris Brook for the work that he's done on this, because Chris has put in a tremendous amount of work on this over the course of the last year or so, and has done a fantastic job up to now. And I would like the executive definitely to recommend this to the council so that it comes before the council in September, and so that we make it happen effectively. So thank you there, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Austin. It's really good to have positive comments from a local member that are so supportive. Right, I think we've got Councillor Brazil next. Councillor Brazil.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The points I'd like to make, I very much would like this whole scheme to come to the audit committee for them to go through it with the fine-tooth comb. I do have, it's evident from the survey that people in Ivybridge want it, so fair enough. But I do have concerns with the financial risk. It's a lot of money. For example, why is it that the capital is not going to be paid off in a certain time? I mean, is that a way of jiggling it so it looks like actually there's a small return? Issues like that, I think, need to be looked at incredibly thoroughly and compare and contrast it to other similar schemes. Is this the correct way forward? Because otherwise it won't affect most of us here, but in a few years' time, when I say a few decades time, we may find ourselves with a bit of a white elephant.
Councillor Brazil, the model used is the model that is set out, I believe, in the policy that governs these projects. But I will ask Mrs. Buckle to come in on the audit committee, whether the audit committee should look at this and whether it does comply with the policy, because I'm certain it complies with the policy. Mrs. Buckle.
Thank you, Chair. If there is a wish of members for it to go to the Audit Committee, the Audit Committee's remit is really to look at the risk management side of things. So the Audit Committee is responsible for risk management and for governance. So if the Audit Committee wish to look at the scheme from that point of view, I'm very happy for that to happen, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Buckle. In that case, I propose, members of the executive, that we add a recommendation that it goes to audit for audit to examine the risk aspect of the project. Executive members, are you happy that a recommendation should be added? Councillor Baldry, you'd like to speak?
I'm happy, Chairman.
Yeah, sorry, I was putting my hand up in order to say I supported that, but yes, I would like to speak.
I know you'd like to speak, but can we just get over this recommendation first?
Well,
that
my hand was raised in support of it going to audit.
Good, okay, and do I guess that everybody else's hand is raised then on the executive?
Yes,
Chairman. Have you heard any naysayers? Fine, okay, thank you. Well, we'll have that added to the recommendations. Well, I've proposed it. I suppose I need a seconder. So, Councillor Baldry, you will second me.
Second.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Baldry, finally, oh, wait a minute.
No, not finally. But I will speak now if I may, Chairman.
Hawkins wants to comment. Do you want to go after or before Councillor Hawkins? Because you wanted to go last.
Let me go now, Chairman. I shall.
Fine, all right, that's okay.
It is fatal when I say I shall be brief, but I shall try very much. I want to support entirely what Councillor Austin said. I am in favour of this scheme because of the survey which shows that the public want it. But primarily, I'm in favour of it because I think Ivybridge desperately needs a regeneration scheme. I agree with Councillor Hopwood's comments about the bridges. I think it is an enormous pity that neither the Town Council nor the landlords are willing to put money into what is really, I think, their responsibility. But I'm not going to go into part two items. It's a pretty rotten investment, actually, Chairman, if we're honest. But I think it is worth doing primarily because of the need to regenerate Ivybridge, and that is why I am going to support the recommendations that it goes forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I would just comment on that. I think we have always known that it was not going to make a lot of money and that it always was a regeneration project because we saw it as being very important to the centre of Ivybridge. Councillor Bastone, do you want to make any comments on all this?
Well, I would go back to what I originally said at the opening, and that was I strongly support and advocate the proposals contained in this report to move the project forward and to de-risk key aspects of it and therefore protect the council's finances, and that is part of this recommendation today.
Thank you, Councillor Bastone, for emphasising that. I think it's really important. Thank you. We now have Councillor Abbott would like to come back on what Councillor Hopwood said. Councillor Abbott.
Leader, you've forgotten me.
No, I haven't forgotten you. You're next.
Okay,
sorry, you're above.
Easy.
You put in twice. That's what's confused me. Do you want to come in now, or would you rather come in later?
Me.
You want to come in now? Come on then.
If I can, yes, please. We've known for a very, very long time that this was going to be a tight investment. But I think we've got to do this for Ivybridge because the regeneration of a town centre at the present moment is really vital. And it's important for all the businesses that are in Ivybridge at the present moment. And my concern that we are talking and talking and talking and not actually getting on with this project. We've got clear consultation that the town residents support it. I feel it's a great shame that the town council cannot be more supportive. And I feel it's a great shame that the owners of Glanville Mills, who do own the two bridges, I understand, or own one of the bridges, cannot actually contribute to their own investment in Glanville Mills and also in the businesses that hopefully will be attracted by having an Aldi in town. I can speak with evidence from being a retailer myself. Our shops opened this week. Town centres are really struggling. And I don't think an awful lot of people realise that a great deal of businesses will be closing in the next 6 to 12 months because they simply cannot take the money to survive. And I do believe that by attracting an Aldi into the town centre, we've had the reinvestment in the leisure centre recently, that this is perfect regeneration of the town centre, and this is exactly what we as a council should be doing. So I just hope we don't lose Aldi. I'm sure hopefully they will wait for us to deliberate, but we really do need town centre regeneration, and Ivybridge needs it perhaps more than most, because towns, the older towns, have got their own character, whereas Ivybridge at the present moment perhaps struggles. I do think it's a shame that we can't open up the river more, because it is a beautiful river, dare I say stream, actually living on a real river in Dartmouth. But it does seem a shame that we can't perhaps include that more. And I'll just end. It's a shame the town council can't be more supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Now, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. Councillor Hopwood asked some very good questions and made some comments, and one she wasn't answered on directly was the town square, which more unusually for those words in the PL21 proposal is actually a much wider bridge. So it would be a bridge over the river with much easier access, because it wouldn't be one pedestrian in each direction at the time, but an opportunity for events to take place. So it would be a significant structure, but it's not that it's a town square as part of the land section.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. It would be useful if PL21 had some idea of how this was to be financed. That's my comment on that. Before we move to the vote, Councillor Bastone, do you want to come back and sum up?
No, I think it's had a good airing, Chairman. And of course, we will be returning to it in September when we've got some more concrete evidence and figures. So I'm happy that members have given their support to it, basically, not just the executive, but the wider membership seem to be keen for this to happen. So I'm pleased about that.
Thank you. Right, so executive, we are asked, the first 2 points are for noting. The third point and the fourth point are recommendations to council. And we now have a fifth point, which is a recommendation that the audit committee should look at the risk side of this project. Could we just see the fifth recommendation, please, on the screen so that everybody's clear what we're... Thank you. Whoops, it's jumping around a bit, but we'll get it. Thank you. That the executive recommend that the audit committee work plan be updated to ensure that risk management elements of the Ivybridge regeneration project be considered at a future meeting. Executive members, are you happy with those 5 points, 2 recommendations and 3 to approve?
Yes, Chairman.
Agreed,
Yes.
Chairman.
Agreed? Yeah, good. Thank you very much. In that case, we will move on to item 10, the final item on the agenda. Councillor Baldry, this is yours, grounds maintenance review.
It is, Chairman. I'm trying to...
You're trying to get there. I sympathise.
I am well and truly there, Chairman. I'm on top of it. I can't see that my video is working, but does that matter? Right, Chairman.
It is working. We can see you well. Thank you very much.
That's all right. Good. Thank you. Lord help you. Right. Chairman, it's nice to end this executive meeting with what I think is a very good news story. Can I just point out that this is, you can read the recommendations for yourself. This is, I may say, the first report that Sarah Moody has brought to this executive, and I congratulate her on it in her new role. And of course, she was greatly assisted by Dale Cropper in producing this report. The recommendations arise from a intensive grounds maintenance study where somebody from South Somerset, where they have a success story in grounds maintenance, conducted the study. And the good news about it is, first of all, that he found that our service was reasonable and fair and not bad, but it needed some sort of improvements, and this is what we are proposing. So the service is in a good state. It can be improved, and that is what these recommendations are calling for. The other good news about this story, about this report, is that at the end of it, it is going to produce income for this council, and I feel it is always better to be out collecting more income than it is cut, which is what we've been faced with on occasions in the past. So you can see the recommendations, Chairman. If you read the 3 bullet points in the executive summary, they are that it will give an improved service delivery, it will reduce operating costs, and it gives an opportunity for growth in the future. The service is fit for purpose and it is commercially viable, and you will see in the Appendix A that there are savings to be made. Chairman, I'm very happy to take any questions, but in the meantime I shall move the recommendation and ask for a seconder, please.
Happy to second that. Councillor Abbott, is it you back again? I get mixed up with how many times you've come in, but please come in if you want to.
Thank you very much. Councillor Baldry, on page 176, section 2.6, Somerset District Council were brought in because of the South Somerset, because of their success, and they generate a profit of £60,000 in their last year. And then in section 2.8, ours has a budgeted cost of 468,000, and I just would like to understand better how the how these numbers tie together. Are we moving towards the South Somerset District Council solution, or what's happening?
No, I think we're moving towards a South Hams District Council solution, and the South Somerset have been successful. That has been built up over many years. They do much more work outside the district council area, and they work for other organisations, and that is the direction in which I would like to move. I would like us to go out and offer a service. We already do it for some towns and parishes. I would like to extend that to other areas. I would like, for example, for us to be offering a service to housing associations and so on. It is for South Hams to decide, and that is why a business plan is going to come back early next year, which shows that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Baldry, first off, I'm pleased to see that the works of the grounds maintenance teams, is being recognised in this report, because I believe that they do a fantastic job around the area. I know sometimes they can be criticised, but I think the work they're doing presently in catch-up is really good, and it is a very dedicated, hard-working team. Obviously can be improved, and this has been identified. Can I ask, as one of the people that sat in a meeting during the review and had input, whether members are going to receive a copy or sight of the results of the review and the new operating model, because that would be useful to have sight of, to sort of consider before we see a business plan, which you indicate is going to come forward to us.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Long. Yes, of course. I don't think we should send the report out to all members. I will be happy to arrange for it to be sent out to those members who have requested it, and you are now top of the list. It is a very, very long report, and rather than subject every member to read the whole thing, I would ask if they could contact Sarah Moody and say that they would like to have a copy of the report. I think that is, well, I'm agreeing, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry.
Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you
yes,
fine.
Good. My question was going to be, can we please make sure that all the towns and parish councils know that South Hams are in business to get business from parish councils, etc., for grass cutting? Because I think some of them don't realise that South Hams are able to cut their grass, obviously at cost, but we need to publicise the fact that we're up and running and in business, and that we do need business in order to sustain this maintenance and also to keep it running. Can that be done, please? Make sure we publicise the fact that we would like more business. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Let's do the business plan first. Let's see what our capacity is in the future, and then we will be shouting from the rooftops what we are available to do.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything to say on this excellent report? And congratulations, Councillor Baldry, you've steered this one very well.
Thank you. Thank you. No,
with the officers.
That was going to be my final comment. I don't know if either of the officers would like to say anything at this stage. I have done nothing except sign off a report.
No comments.
Can I comment?
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Hawkins, did you want to comment?
If I can, yes, please. Yes. From the experience that we've had as a Kingsware Parish Councillor over the last 4 or 5 years, we used to use the South Hams team to do our grounds maintenance. Regrettably, we left South Hams about 2 years ago. We came back in about a year ago because we only had a 1 year external contract with our other provider. The quality of the grounds maintenance now and the care and attention that is being provided by our team is much better than it was in the past. And I'm fully supportive of this recommendation, because it is a way that we can work closer with our towns and our parishes and provide them with a good value for contract. And I think it's a really good news story, and I think we should do more of this if we can in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins.
Right, everybody. Councillor Baldry, do you want to sum up at all, or is that it? Are you happy to go to the recommendations?
Let's leave it on a positive note, Chairman.
Good.
I have moved the recommendation. You seconded them. I ask for support.
Does everybody support the recommendations?
Yes.
Yes, Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, everybody. That brings us to the end of the meeting, which is I'm now going to close. Thank you very much. Goodbye.